small
storage in it.
boat, almost like
Because
a
we
toy
bought, we had a bank.
that he runs.
Then I saw him, it's a very complicated looking thing, yeah.
If we can come to order, please. This is a meeting of the Bethany Beach Stormwater and Flood Committee. We have present all our members here today, as well as Will Wharton with the town for IT and handles this. Just to refresh everybody, that our members of the committee are Chip Smith right here beside me, who is also has past experience with the Corps of Engineers, extensive experience with the Corps of Engineers, which comes in handy. Bruce Fry, right here. He was previous chairman of this committee and is involved in a lot of local and area water and stormwater committees and organizations. John Colby down at the end, a resident over in the Tingle, are you on 6th Street or, no, on 2nd Street?
I'm a wet homeowner on 2nd Street.
There you go. The wet homeowner I was going to bring up, but but that's in that area. That's the way it is. Mark Bauernhover, who is an architect. He's a local resident, and he is also on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and has been working with all the pervious adjustments to the town code, as well as the greening of Bethany. And Jack Gordon, right here, one of our previous mayors, and also in a rather low flood area, lives in, so. Okay, to get started, approval of the agenda, if I could have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Approval of the minutes from our January meeting. A motion, please.
So moved. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. An update on our Steel Gate Dam project. Cliff, would you
Sir,
care to take that one?
right now, we've probably pushed the construction of the dam back however many weeks or months. We've gone back to our engineer and been in a dialogue about them doing more survey work and actually doing some more LiDAR work to not only look at potential impact here in Bethany, but outside of Bethany. And before we move along and do any more work on the project, we want to make dot our I's and cross our T's regarding further impact in the Assawoman. We were fairly well convinced in all of our other studies at this point in time that we have no impact, but we wanted to expand what we're doing to make sure that we can unequivocally answer the question. And what we have found to date is that we see no impact in significant events. The dam is 3 feet, it overtops, so it self-regulates to a certain degree. But in conversations with our engineers, we've decided to go back and do a little bit more work in that area.
Okay. I apologize, I did not introduce
It's okay.
Cliff,
Anonymous is good, so.
our town manager. So, do you have any thoughts on timing on this?
Right now, we'll do a LiDAR flyover in about a week or two. I think they're probably on the ground doing survey work, and it's a matter of when they put that all together and the engineers review that. So, again, it'll be a few more weeks. The project is still alive and well, but we want to go back and, again, take an extra hard look.
What brought this up? Was something specific said, or are we just doing something in extent of what we did before?
We're doing something in past what we did before to make sure that the question is been asked and truly answered, so no one can question that. Moving forward with the project, as we look for grants and we go to DENREC and we go to the Corps for whatever granting, whatever permitting we need to make sure those questions are answered. That, not answering that question as well as we can will derail the project. So we're doing our damnedest to make sure that we have the answer right, so.
Nothing moves quickly, and there's a lot of approvals that it has to get through, and a lot of people that have to be made happy with it before it can proceed. Any questions? Any comments from those here? Okay. I'm sorry, could you please step up? We're being recorded here, and we're live now, and need to be able to make sure everybody
Yep.
can hear. And
Sure.
state your.
Yeah, hi, Eric Sellis now, I live in Lake Bethany. I'm just curious as to what the timeline is projected to be like, given what you just added. Thank you.
The 30% study we commissioned was more like a 60% study for those people that are familiar with that sort of terminology and how engineers use it. Much of the groundwork has been done, much of the design work has been done, and it's, again, comparable to a 60% study. So we're not far off of having them complete something that is an actual build, if you will. The timeline is dependent on funding, and right now we are aggressively looking for funding. We've got some pre-application feelers out for funding, but when this happens will depend on when we find the $2+ million to build it. So, which is a non-answer, so I apologize.
Any other comments from the committee? Beach replenishment. Do you want to comment on that one? I mean, we've been actively watching the cams up in Rehoboth. They were supposed to be starting here, supposed to have been started. I haven't seen any Weeks. Weeks Marine is doing has the contract to do all the municipalities, from Rehoboth to Dewey to Bethany next, and then on south to South Bethany and Fenwick. Their tentative schedule was released a while ago, and it indicated that they should be mobilizing and getting ready to start up in Rehoboth, if not starting. And I've not noticed anything. Have you got any comments on that, Cliff?
No, and the replenishment should run from Rehoboth, Dewey, and then come south to Bethany. We had hoped that they would be mobilized here by, and actually working now. And given the time frame that we're looking at, I'm afraid we're going to have a replenishment during the summer again, and there's not much we can do to avoid that, but that's the way it would look. And at the very least, even if we have replenishment done June, July, they won't be getting to fencing and pathways until even later in the summer. They come back with separate contractors and do that. It's the gift horse that in whose mouth you don't look, but it's overdue for us, yes.
Yeah, the paper said they're going to start April 8th, supposedly in Rehoboth, maybe?
Maybe. I mean, they're not mobilized at all yet, so.
Yeah. In the meantime, we have the crossovers. Most of them are open. Do you see additional maintenance on those things? If we have to go through the summer with the crossovers the way they are?
Well, the problem with the crossovers right now is we can't put Moby mats on them until they're reconstructed. And if we do put Moby mats down, for those who have been on the beach at all, almost every high tide of any significance at all breaks at the foot of the toe of the dune. So if we were to put Moby mats down, we would have to move Moby mats for every weather event. There's very little beach. The beach is very narrow right now.
And I would think if you put Moby mats down with those crossovers the way they are now, they would be more dangerous than.
You could ski on them, yes.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be sliding right down to the bottom.
Right.
Exactly. But will Do you think Denrick will come back and do some reshaping of those things for?
Denrick's been very, very helpful. They have manpower issues, and the unit that does that's a very small unit, and they have the entire coast up to Slaughter Beach and Broad Kill, and they work on those areas too. So they help when they can.
Okay.
The problem is that they limit, they're the only people that can do the work. Even if we could do some of the work, we're not allowed, so.
Okay, understood. Any comments from those present? The Back Bay study, that has been initiated, and I believe they've reached out to municipalities.
No, the first meeting, formal meeting, I understand, specific to the Back Bay study with the Corps and DENREC is happening or will happen shortly. After that meeting, DENREC mentioned that they would have some sort of a dialogue with affected municipalities that would potentially be impacted. But we've not heard anything about that yet. And this is a work between DENREC and the Corps, not between local governments.
Okay, thank you, Cliff. The next item on the agenda, the recent town boring study, which has been completed. It's a rather detailed study and everything, and would you care to comment on
Sure.
that one too?
We did for want of a better phrase, a soil analysis, which was an 8-foot boring at 40 different locations in town. And the results came back and sort of told us what we already knew, but it's interesting at the very least. In all 40 boring locations, and they report on the boring in 2-foot segments, 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6, and 6 to 8. In all 40 of the borings, the 0 to 2-foot depth was described as wet in all 40 borings and throughout the entire town. And this was borings throughout all of Bethany. More interesting was the saturation level of the soil. In all 40 borings, the saturation level, the average saturation level was 3.2, which means that's the average. And there were many areas where the earth here, right on streets where some of you all live, is saturated right at the surface, essentially. And that is a standing condition. That's not something that's variable. That's their analysis of our soil conditions. So sometimes when you see standing water or you see the swale in your backyard full of water, it's because the ground is saturated to the sides of that. It's not that it's not draining, so.
Any comments, any questions from the committee?
3.2 means what?
3.2 feet, the ground is saturated. 3.2 feet.
Saturated to
on average.
50%, to 100%?
Whatever the nomenclature, whatever they use to determine saturation for the engineer's report, and I don't have that information.
Okay.
I would think that's 100%. When you say saturated, it's,
It's 100% saturated to be water, wouldn't it?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's not just
Caved in to
moist,
3
it's
feet,
saturated.
That's what it means, right?
So,
Will they cave in all
any
the way
other
down?
questions or comments from those present? Moving on, the Sea Grant study. This is a rather important and a should be well received. Well, I don't know how about well received within the state. There was a study put together back in 2012 that covers the contribution, the economic contribution of the coastal areas of Delaware to the overall state economy, overall state of Delaware economy. It was put together by this area, by the Sea Grant organization, which is part of the University of Delaware, to demonstrate the importance of the economy, to the overall economy of the state, of the coastal areas. It was put together in 2012. It is going to be reevaluated and re-put out, and it's being prepared as we speak, and I believe will be done by the end of May, was that correct?
Yes.
Its purpose is to, yes, demonstrate the importance and everything, but to emphasize that to within Sussex County, within the state of Delaware, for grants. I believe it was, the purpose is to dedicate a portion of the transfer tax. Is that correct?
No.
Okay.
We took the 2012 study, the Association of Coastal Towns, which are the coastal communities from Lewis to Fenwick, including Henlopen Acres, because it's an incorporated municipality, took the 2012 study and took it to the county and talked to the county about them investing in an infrastructure fund to help with beach replenishment, the dredging of waterways and canals, things that the state hasn't been able to fund as well as they should. The county said that was not something they could do because they just couldn't do something that was specific to just coastal communities. They had to do something that would be generous, if you will, to the entire county. So at that point in time, they took a portion of their transfer tax, distributed it entirely to all the municipalities in Sussex, including the coastal towns. The importance from the Association of Coastal Towns perspective for this report is Delaware's industries have fluctuated over the years. It used to be chemicals, then it went to the auto industry, then it went to the credit card industry, and now the industry that Delaware considers its a prime industry is agriculture. The 2012 study listed a tax benefit of $7 billion in state, federal, and local taxes because of what they classify as coastal industry. And the study is very broad in what it looks at, and it looks at the true impact of the beach on the region. And coastal industry now is probably worth about $8.5 to $9 billion and probably eclipses agriculture. What happens is, though, agriculture has a very, very aggressive lobby campaign, lobbyist in Dover, and you hear a lot about it, but nobody essentially lobbies for coastal industry, and the things that help coastal industry is maintaining the infrastructure that supports it, replenishment, the canals, all of that. So the Association of Coastal Towns hopes to be able to get this document and use this document in the state with state legislators and federal legislators also. So,
And let me add that it was Cliff and our mayor who took the initiative to put up the initial funds to get the study started, and the Association of Coastal Towns will more than likely be contributing to that as well.
yes, they already have. The other,
They already have? Okay.
the other municipalities are, yes.
Okay. But Bethany is the one that took the initiative to push it and get it started.
I think we think it's very important here for what we need to do in Dover and other places, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Cliff.
Sir.
Next on the agenda, the update on the Loop Canal bulkhead, living shoreline, and dredging. Let me just make one comment on the dredging, that there was an article this last week in the Coastal Point which noted what the status was of the current, this year it's only White's Creek, and it was going to come up the Assawoman to Cedar Neck Road. That is probably not going to happen this year. They are behind schedule, and I'm not sure I don't think they're going to get to the Assawoman at all this year. They have to stop their operations as of the 31st of March. So that's only 2 weeks away. If you've seen the pumps, there is a pump right up here at the 26 bridge as you go across. They are pumping your spoils all the way up from White's Creek, all the way up the canal, over into the Assawoman Wildlife Preserve, the wetlands over there, to refurbish them. So just as a point of interest, that's you can see that from the bridge, and there's a huge generator and pump system going on right there. Cliff, do you want to
Sure.
address
Uh,
this?
First, we don't have a dredging project. So right now, the state will be dredging the Assawoman next spring. And we were aware of that. We had a conversation with DENREC officials, and we wanted to know if we might be able to piggyback off their effort in terms of maybe use their engineers and, more importantly, possibly their spoil site, because in dredging, one of the problems you have is what you're going to do with your spoils, which can become very expensive and hard to permit. So DENREC was interested in helping us, and we are piggybacking with them at this point in time to explore what it might cost us to dredge the loop canal, where it might need to be dredged as just a simple maintenance dredge. And to that end, we've completed a bathymetric study of the loop, and I think you have that. I think you probably sent that to your members.
We have.
So that's the first stage of the engineers looking at the possibility of dredging, coming back to us, having a dialogue about maintenance and/or a complete dredge and what those costs would be. And again, that's something that would be cost dependent. Independent of that is the bulkheading of the land strip at Lake Bethany and the biologs, what would be a living shoreline on the inland side or the south side of that land strip. Right now, it's estimated that the bulkhead would cost in the neighborhood of about $750,000 to construct, and the living shoreline would be $150,000. We are in the permitting process, in the design process right now, permitting with DENREC. We have a meeting next month with DENREC regarding the bulkhead, and we are also seeking grant money and federal funding to help us with the cost of that project. So that's where that stands. It is something I think it's important enough, if we're not able to find the funding, that the town may consider just moving ahead with now. Because if we don't shore up the land strip on the loop canal side, it's going to further erode, and especially once the Assawoman is dredged, the water level doesn't increase, but the speed or the force of the water will increase at the point in time that the loop is dredged, and there's more water moving in the loop than there is today. So getting that done will be important to preserving that land strip.
$750 was the cost for the bulkheads?
So that's simple construction cost,
Right.
yes.
Is there an estimate for the living shoreline, or is that
150,000,
150?
and that would probably be a biolog of some sort,
Okay, that's those coconut
yes,
logs that,
that wash away and aren't effective, yes.
well, they wouldn't be used where there's waves, so maybe they'll be a little more stable over there.
Maybe.
I was, I thought we had the money for that. I thought that was, that 900,000, the town had access to right now. That's not true?
Well, we can use those dollars somewhere else potentially, but right now we are looking for some other federal dollars to help us with the project.
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
always
Yeah.
good, but if we have the
As I said,
money, it won't slow us down.
yes, exactly. It needs to be done.
Again, is there do you have a timeline in mind for this?
I'm not sure how long DENREC will take to permit this. So we have the first permitting meeting here again next month, so it will be contingent on that,
Okay. Hopefully.
and probably not something that we would want to do during the summer, so.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you feel that that's a possibility for the fall?
Yes, I would think it would be a possibility.
Okay. I gather we have some questions.
Yes.
Okay, please speak in the microphone, state your name and Bethany address, please.
Yeah, Matt Kirk, 614 6th Street. This is to you, Cliff. You mentioned looking at the possibility of dredging the Bethany Loop Canal. Do you mean the entire Loop Canal?
I don't know if we would consider, and I'm not sure how we would be able to say efficiently or cost-effectively dredge the eastern portion of the loop, the actual loop itself, which is significantly silted. But talking about the loop, we would look at the entire loop and possibly some of the Evans and Tingle canals, if
Yeah,
you will.
that's
Yeah.
That's more what I'm interested in.
So that will be something that will be in consideration, but, well,
So
what can we
that'll
do, what can we do there and what the cost would be. But we don't know where we're going with this right now because we don't know the cost yet, so.
Yeah, right, but you're gonna
But,
look at that whole
yes,
possibility.
They've been, the study includes those, yes.
Okay. Can I digress to the soil borings? I got one quick
Sure.
question. So the soil borings, was that just for information, or is there some other project objective with that?
No, it's information,
Okay. Thank you.
sir.
I think that's to be used for a number of things within the town, for public works in their operations.
Yes,
and-
and just the same reason, we're also going to LiDAR the entire loop itself and a portion of the salt pond that we own, just again for things that we have, for all the different things we do, just having it done and being able to refer to it's a help to us.
Okay. Very good. Any further questions? Committee questions?
I'm just, excuse me, the timing of the dredging, it can only be done during certain months?
Well, that's
White's
White's Creek is Denrec's choice, probably not to impede traffic navigation on the,
So it has to stop on March 31st?
that's them. I have no idea what,
Is there a start date? Does it start on September 1st? What are the,
I don't know what Denrec's, I
mean,
don't know
it's in
what they
progress
do with
right
that,
now.
so.
This
Right.
year. It has to stop March the 31st, and I believe I was reading in the Coastal Point that it's because of the flounder
flounder, okay.
incubating and whatever, so young flounders.
So when do they graduate? When can we start up again, is the question.
I'm not sure it's as early as September, I doubt that,
Okay.
but sometime in the
Because it seems
fall.
like they had a plan to do this work, and then they got started late, and then they had to stop by a certain date, so they couldn't complete what they anticipated. They would be able to start up again in September? Is that what
I'm not sure whether that's September.
okay. All right,
I mean, it's in the fall, but I'm not sure how early that can be.
Follow it.
Unless somebody else has information on that.
Hi, Eric Selesno again, 934 Heron Drive in Lake Bethany. So my home backs up to the salt pond portion, and a lot of that marsh is dying, quite honestly. The water's too high, the plants aren't getting oxygenation, and if you look at Google Maps, well, you probably have, right, from 5 years ago, and now you'll see incredible dying of the marsh because the water's too high. I talked to Denrec the other day and asked them why they were pumping the spoils all the way up to South Bethany or beyond, when it would be much shorter just to shoot it right in there and fill in some of that. And the Denrec person who's managing the project said, oh, that's a really good idea, but the permit's already done and that project's already set. I then talked to the coastal bays about it too, and they understood of the problem with that marsh dying. And so what I would suggest or urge you all to think about when there is future dredging here, that we think about filling in, if Denrec lets you, I don't know who owns what, but the area behind Heron Drive that backs up to the salt pond.
Sure, if you see this area right around here, which is what you're referring to. And I have better maps of that someplace. When we were first very interested in trying to get rid of all the shoaling right there at the entrance to the salt pond, right probably behind where you're speaking about, we went to Denrec, we thought the marsh was dead there, and that's what it looks like when you go to Google Earth. And we did preliminary permitting with them and discussions with them, and we were talking about taking those spoils, which again should be specific to the area, it was one of the things they look at when they do their analysis, and replenishing that marsh. And they came back to us and told us that they didn't think that that was originally marsh, and that they weren't going to let us do that. Now, I don't know if that's changed today and different people feel a different way about it, but they didn't consider that marsh. I guess they considered it lowland that was blighted because of a little bit of sea level rise, but they wouldn't talk to us about restoring that.
Yeah, I mean, they did years ago some sort of mosquito control thing through there, which the water now enters and increases. But I just want to urge you to consider that if it's allowable.
Sure.
When there's future stuff, because it makes no sense to pump it 1.5 miles up. when
No,
you could
and
pump
the guard camp has the same issue on their shoreline in the salt pond. So if moving spoils is an issue and DENREC will permit this, certainly that would be the easiest, least expensive, most beneficial thing to Bethany, yes.
Thanks for considering it.
Thank you.
Matt Kirks again. You said you were answering him and said there was a study done in that area where it enters. How long ago was that done?
I'd say 3, 4 years ago,
Okay, thanks.
sir.
Okay, any further questions, comments?
Got a comment. I think you're talking about that little spit of land, Eric, out there as opposed to right in back of your house. Filling in that wetland? Oh, okay, because the Center for the Inland Bays, if you recall, more or less destroyed that strip out there that was between the salt pond and the canal by having all this heavy equipment put in those logs that have since floated away that were supposed to hold the soil on that little spit of land. So we sort of caused our own problem there as far as I'm concerned, because that has continued to erode away, and a lot of these logs have really not solved the problem that we had. And I think the spoils should go there as opposed to the wetlands right behind us.
Hopefully there's enough for all. But yeah, I was referring to the real, right behind us where the new house is, and we leveled it off.
Right.
If you look at the Google map from 5 years ago, when it was this big, and now this year, it's this, you know better than I do, Ken.
Okay, any further comments? The next item we have on the agenda is the greening of Bethany initiative. Mark, would you care to make a few comments on that?
Yeah, I think I didn't get ahead of this item on the agenda before it went out, but the Planning and Zoning Commission's been sort of deep into finalizing the comprehensive plan draft for the town council review and approval or adoption. So we've kind of paused or tabled some of the items beyond the previous pavement that we completed last year. So we'll be getting back into some of these items to complement, I think, the recommendations in that plan, but I don't think it makes sense to report out on that until the comprehensive plan's approved. So maybe next meeting, hopefully, could share a deeper update.
Okay, I mean, generally it was for,
It's
trees.
essentially like an open initiative to review different code and other items that would, just look for opportunities to further improve or define or refine code as it relates to, things that relate to nature, sustainability, other approaches like that. So it's a little bit more of a deeper dive initiative to look for opportunities as, time goes on to consider initiatives to support sustainability.
okay, for a future meeting.
Correct, yep.
And if you keep tabs on the planning and zoning meetings, which are usually the 3rd or 4th Saturday of every month, that's where they cover those sort of things and get into detail. As Mark says, they are just completed the comprehensive plan, which is a plan that has to be updated for the town every 10 years to the state of Delaware. It's very comprehensive, as the words indicate. It has taken a lot of work and a lot of effort with all the changes that have gone on in the last 10 years. So, and looking forward the next 10 years. So it's been quite an endeavor of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Next item on the agenda is the impervious, adjusting the best practices to accommodate the, primarily to accommodate the impervious surfaces ordinance that were enacted in December. We've put together an adjustment draft, and I've had put it out to the committee, and there's been a couple of comments. Do we have any further comments on this? I've got a couple of typo and grammatical type things, but do we have, I would like to put this together and submit it to the town council for an approval of it. Do I have a motion here in that regard?
So moved.
Second?
Second? Those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I have one question. The current one is on our website.
Yes, it
Do we
is.
know if anybody ever looks at that?
I don't know that.
We have a
I
way
don't
to
know whether
tell
there's a
that,
way
Cliff,
to monitor that.
Can you gauge whether something, a specific item that gets a hit on the website or not? Or just the number of people that open the website overall?
I think it's more, it's an overall,
Okay.
yeah. And we have for certain page views we can verify, but not specific documentation.
Just wondered. I went and looked at it yesterday. It is easy to get to, unlike some things on our website. So I think that was good. I just wondered if anybody got to it or not.
Well, I mean, that may lead into our next item here, which is communication strategy. And I agree with you that we need to, I'm not sure it's getting the exposure, but are people taking advantage of that exposure?
Maybe the
I-
BBLA could mention it.
We can, we did last time.
Did you?
Right. Yep. You have. But one of my thoughts is, and I'm going to move on here to the next item, our communication strategy. One of the things that I have, would like to see, and I'd like comments on it, is to put together some sort of an A-frame signage. And in conjunction with that, maybe a sleeve, you know, one of those vinyl sleeves like they have, or plastic sleeves like the realty firms use, and possibly insert the best practices. So put it out there on the street at various town events. I'm thinking the farmer's market or some of the events on the boardwalk, where we do get a lot of property owners that go through. Of course, we get a lot of tourists as well, but it's there, and it's more in your face than is on the town website.
Yeah.
So my thoughts are, let's proceed with something like that. Do we have some thoughts on that? And then also I put out a general layout for A-frame signage, which, yeah, we have them in the farmer's market. You know, they're those A-frames that fold out, and you can put all kinds of things on them. And we find them very, very good in the market as far as getting information out. You know, things like keep your dog out of the market and that sort of thing. But
I think the font could be bigger. I had a little trouble
well,
reading this.
that can certainly be adjusted. But thoughts on this?
Bless you.
Any comments or?
So you're proposing like issues like beach replenishment status and
Yeah, and I would put some pictures in there with it. You know, something.
No, he's talking about best practices. So we have boards on the boardwalk that we can use. We haven't had them up since we've had the top rail on the boardwalk replaced a number of years ago. But we could do things like that there. And I would suggest and would make the same recommendation to the council that if you're going to do A-frames, that you do them shoulder season things specific like the farmer's market, but I don't know what real benefit you would have in July and August with the crowds from out of the area
Yeah.
looking at best management practices specifically for our area. And they create, I think, their own problems with people moving and excess signage and all that. But off-season, I could see a benefit maybe.
Okay, well, I agree with you on the, like, you know, for concerts and stuff, because you've probably got mostly people from out of town. Of course, you certainly have people from in town, but I think like the farmer's market, we draw a lot of
Locals. yes,
locals
yeah.
for that. So, we have a
I do. My name is Ann Mastropolo, 523 B, Spinnaker Court. I'm in Stewart's Watch. I have been here 3 years. I obviously come from New York. I'm sure you could tell from my accent. I lived in Long Beach, New York, which is very close also to the ocean. And I was very involved in the flooding and stormwater committees there as well. And what we have found is just doing your little local area is not really where it's all coming from. Garbage from 3-4 towns up will all find its way to the ocean. It's all going to come this way no matter what. That's what happens. So unless you use this initiative with other municipalities, it just is not going to work. It's just not going to work. I know it for a fact. So you have to get with the governments of all the little towns, and everyone has to do the same thing for it to really accomplish anything.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons there is an Association of Coastal Towns, which meets regularly with the mayors and town managers of each of those towns, and that includes Rehoboth. It includes Henlopen Acres, which is an incorporated area. It includes Dewey, it includes Bethany, it includes South Bethany, it includes Fenwick. So it covers the entire incorporated
coastline.
group up and down the coast.
Right. You need to go inland a little bit too. That's what the issue is.
Excuse me, are you talking about flood control or something
I'm
else?
talking about stormwater pollution. I'm talking about all of it. All of that. I mean, you could throw garbage in Ocean View by Giant. You could throw it on the ground, and eventually it will make its way to the ocean, period. It's a proven fact. So, and what happens is a lot of the garbage that we find here is coming from other towns.
So it's litter you're worried about in the canal?
It's litter and all of it. Anything that goes into our little waterways, it's all coming from other places. It's not people like, I live in Stewart's Watch. If I were to litter right there, it wouldn't stay in my property, it would come this way. So I'm pointing out that you need more than just our little town. You need a lot of people involved in an initiative like that.
Thank you. Good comment. Okay. So any thoughts or adjustments relative to signage or approach? You know, please let me know. And
I think it's a great idea, but as you said, in the shoulder seasons, when there's more residents around, yeah.
yeah, or
And
something
bigger
like that.
font,
Yeah, or something like the market, which is,
yeah.
which is many locals, so. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, DelDOT Route 1 initiative. Cliff, you may have some comments on that.
DelDOT has begun a program to make Route 1, for want of a better word and an overused word, but to make Route 1 itself more resilient and to make it essentially a road that you could travel on during a storm event, then that wouldn't potentially leave you stranded. And to that end, they've already done some work north of the inlet, where they've elevated the blacktop. Route 1 is not flooded near as much as it used to be, and they're extending that sort of analysis, if you will, up and down the coastline to see what they might be able to do to make sure that people can travel on Route 1 in the event of a storm. They tell us that this is a long-range thing that they're looking at, that to expect nothing immediate, but at least they are looking at what they might be able to do. When they met with us in Bethany, in my time here, the 98 storm was the most significant storm, winter 98 storm, most significant storm we've had since I have been here. And that brought water up to the edges of the roadway right at the loop, but has never crossed Route 1 in Bethany Beach. And Brett Warner, our Public Works Director, who's been here 38 years, has had the same experience. So I don't see anything they're doing specifically affecting us. The one recommendation that I made when we had our meeting with DelDOT is that they seriously consider looking at the Vines Creek Bridge, because people that live in the area know if you evacuate, you don't evacuate north, you don't evacuate south, you evacuate on 26. And the real weak point there is the Vines Creek Bridge. Even though it's a fairly new bridge, you can see it's overtops and you see the water right at the edge. And there are ways you can get to Route 113 without having to cross bridges and such, but it's sort of convoluted, and it's nothing you're going to pull up on the nav in your car either, so if you're trying to leave here. But long-term for them, and I'm glad they're looking at it.
Good. Thank you, Cliff. The last item I've got here is just individual research of, flood studies that are done elsewhere and or flood-related articles. There have been a series of articles coming out of the Coastal Point of recently, which relative to South Bethany, relative to a number of different areas, which have been quite good. They're taking a lot of attention to it and producing some nice researching and coming up with some nice, some good things which are happening. So it's a good thing. It's good to know that this area has a lot of activity and looking at our concerns relative to stormwater and flooding. I also want to just mention the BBLA put together a nice article about a whole newsletter about a month ago, which was very comprehensive and quite good as well as far as making an awareness for the public of our flooding situation, what's being done, what can be done, so on. Any other thoughts relative to that? Any other comments?
I have just a small point of information. I joined this committee because I have flooding on my property, and recently the city paved the streets in my neighborhood. It basically created a 3 to 4 inch dam on both sides of my property. I've never had water in my basement until that occurred. And in 2 storms since then, I've had water in my basement that I've had to take the machine out and soak up, toss it out. So I guess unintended consequences, it's nice to have a nice road out there, but it stopped the flow of water from my property into the street and down to the end of the block. So I just throwing that out there, water has to go somewhere. And when we do things like pave streets, we create artificial barriers to that water's flow, and that has impacted my property. Now when I sell that property, I'm going to have to disclose that I've had water in my basement since I've been there. So it's a problem we all share, I guess. I just wanted to make the committee aware of that.
Yeah, it is. It is. And possibly, I don't know your particular situation, but a lot of times homeowners can on their own property, can create swales to better channel the water toward the town swales.
I'm going to be getting somebody in to take a look at it to tell me what my solutions are. Hopefully, it won't be another $9,000 solution, which is what I got when I first moved into the property. Hopefully, it'll be something could be done that's less expensive.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do things. On our property, we've got a French drain system that goes around the house because we had the same sort of situation with heavy storms. It wasn't with the water coming up or anything, it was with runoff. And that collects the water and it flows to a sump, and that we pump it just to the back of our yard where there is, natural drainage, and it works fine. We've had it running for.
Yeah, those kind of solutions are great, but there's a house right next to me, and there's a house behind me, and, I would be moving it from my property to my neighbor's property.
That's,
Which-
Not encouraged.
I'll get your address at the end of the meeting and see what Public
Pardon
Works. I'll get your address at the end of the meeting to see if Public Works can help you. And are you the only Bethany Beach property owner with a basement? Because
Actually, it's built on the poles.
Okay.
But the basement is concrete, and it's a driveway, and it's enclosed.
okay.
And so,
do you have another comment? If I may, yeah. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, Tracy Mulligan, 993 Sandbar Court in Lake Bethany. And I had two thoughts on your agenda items of the adjusted best practices and the communication strategy. We have recently completing a house addition, so we worked with a building inspector who is absolutely fabulous.
She is.
From a consumer standpoint. We took her aback because with the impervious ordinance, which happened in December, we were unaware that there was a need for a permit to restore the gravel that was there and the pavers, the stones, the walkway, individual 2-by-2 foot stones. So we took her aback. And I'm pretty familiar with the town website. I'd attended the meetings, at least one meeting of the ordinance. I had no idea there was a permit requirement. And I do not understand the ordinance fully. And I went back and reread it. So the adjusted best practices, if it can explain better what a consumer or a homeowner has to do to comply with regulations as well as go beyond that with best practices, I would have found that very useful.
Okay. Will the new ordinance adjustments relate to new construction? I'm correct on that, am I?
Not,
No.
Okay,
It's new construction and any project. So,
Oh.
for instance, yes,
Right.
anything that needs a permit.
correct. So if
So
you're making an
anything
adjustment
you
on
needed a
your-
building permit for would probably toll the bell for that review.
yes, we had the building permit.
Okay.
It was an additional permit required by the landscaper in order to put back like a walkway and
Okay.
gravel.
So you had your construction was done, then after the ordinance came into play, the landscaper then submitted a different plan to,
It
The building
came
inspector.
right in the middle, Cliff. We got the building permit in September, the ordinance changed in December. We got the certificate of occupancy in March, which is when Susan said, oh, wait a minute, where's your permit for this? And we said, we didn't know about a permit.
Okay.
And it got resolved very rapidly. It was not an issue because we were putting back what was there. But the point of it is that if there are requirements, you'll get more compliance if folks have an easy way to understand those requirements. Because we were of the best intention. It's a local landscaper, Lords, that has done this for years. They were unaware of it. It comes back to the communication strategy. And we fully support the intent. It's just knowing what was, understanding what was supposed to be done in the particulars. And I didn't plan to speak
Sure.
here. I'd write a letter or something, but you had these two lovely items right on your agenda. And so that's the thoughts.
Okay, I agree. A good thought, too.
One other particular is gravel, whether that's impervious or pervious. And to me, it's water goes through it, but I'm not sure how that's classified in the regulations or in the practices, and that makes a whopping difference.
Okay. Have you gone back and looked at those those ordinances, which are,
I reread the ordinances, and I'll reread them again, because each time you get a little better understanding.
yeah,
But it was, yeah, and I'm not the best at reading ordinances, but,
and there was a site plan with kind of examples on it. I'm not sure that's on the part of the.
And Tracy is great at reading ordinances, trust me, so. So I think the ordinance is difficult to understand. I think the planning commission knows that the ordinance is difficult to understand. And I think they left the building inspector enough latitude to be able to help everyone. But I don't know if, maybe it needs to be, and it was thoroughly reviewed and worked on, but I don't know what we can do to make it easier for people to, and contractors to figure out, if you will.
a user guide or best practices, something. I couldn't, I went back to the schedule of fees, which is obviously a year old. I didn't find, it wasn't easy to understand, even with someone fairly knowledgeable and people with the best of intentions of compliance.
Yeah.
And it kind of puts the building inspector in the middle.
Yes.
And so it's not her role to communicate it. She does a one-at-a-time thing.
But I think the issue, Tracy, is that it's not easy to communicate.
Yeah,
That it's too complex to simply communicate, if you will.
yeah.
I mean, if that makes sense to you, so.
Yeah,
The one particular suggestion in where it says recently enacted ordinances, if there was some key points put on that same website, like when you do this, you need to apply for a building permit, for the appropriate permit. It was $100.
yeah.
But to make her life easier, because she's got enough problems, enough, without anything else hitting her to communicate.
Right.
Not enough problems, enough situations to solve.
Yeah, no, it's a good thought, and
So-
I agree with you. And, as Cliff said, it's not an easy subject, and it's a little bit subjective.
Yeah. And the folks who wrote it have all the background of all the meetings. But I don't.
Yeah.
And I'm a representative of other folks that would want to comply. Anyway,
And I think you're in the majority. I mean,
yeah, it's a lovely.
everybody wants to comply, or most people do anyway.
It's a lovely town, lovely committees, lovely council. Seriously, I come here and I feel good just by being in the room and listening. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is there any other new business or comments? Yes. You mentioned one. I was talking to you earlier about Westwood. Yep, if you could step up there.
My name's Ed Brezicek. I live at the Westwood at Bethany, up on Beach Haven Drive. And we've had plenty of water issues. And about a month ago, my wife came to the meeting, your last meeting, and said something, and people came out, and they actually cleaned the one road, and it really helped a lot. But the road next to it has never been anything done to it. Like, they came out one day and then never came back to do the other road. And I was wondering if there's any chance that somebody could come out and look at that. 'Cause
Sure.
when it rains, it totally floods.
Sure.
And the people back there can't even park their cars. They have to park their cars up by the front of the entrance. And they have to, like, walk back. And you can't even get that back to the trash cans or anything on that side of the community.
Cliff, do you know where that he's talking about?
I know we went out, I didn't know we had left it undone. There's some issues there we can't
Okay.
resolve because of the swale that borders your community and Lake Bethany.
Yeah.
But we'll have somebody come back out and talk to you.
In fact, and Sussex County's been having vehicles out there, but they have, I don't know what they're doing.
Well, it makes two of us then, so,
Okay, they just sit there and look around and then they leave.
there you go.
And so, okay, well, if we could have someone come out and look at that other road,
Yes.
would be really helpful.
And you mentioned a letter. I'm not sure what,
Oh, yeah, we received a letter about a month and a half ago about what was going on in the water issues. We
Was
got-
it from the
received something in the
town?
mail. And my wife, actually, we lost it, and we didn't know if there was a way to get a copy of that.
With water issues,
There were, I believe it was issues in the whole community, the whole town of Bethany. Like it went out to all the residents or something, and,
no, I don't think so.
I don't know.
okay. Well, she said she got something and we lost it, and we didn't know if there was a way to get another copy of that, that's all.
From the town.
Yeah, it was from the town of Bethany. So,
Okay.
okay, I'll look into it.
Please.
Yeah, if you come up with any information on it or whatever, you can always call into the town or email in, and at admin@townofbethanybeach.com.
Website, too.
That's all we have to cover today, unless somebody else has something else. I'm going to make we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you for coming out.
Take the, you said they're on some list, or